"Take your babies and leave," he shouted at his wife, his mother smirking behind him. They thought she was nothing, worthless, desperate. What they didn't know, she was secretly worth $200 million. And in 48 hours, she would own everything they had, their company, their reputation, their future. This is how one underestimated woman made an entire family disappear. But before we dive into how she turned pain into power, do me one small favor, especially if you believe no mother should ever be humiliated or thrown out after giving birth. Hit that subscribe button. It costs you nothing, but it helps me keep sharing stories that expose wicked families, protect women, and prove that karma is very real. And while you're at it, drop a comment below telling us where you're watching from. Let's see which cities are tuning into this shocking story. Maya Caldwell stood at the entrance of the Carmichael mansion, her fingers trembling slightly as she smoothed down her dress. The building loomed before her like a fortress, all marble columns and cold perfection. She had met Derek at a charity gala 3 months ago, charmed by his smile and the way he listened when she spoke about her dreams. Now, as his wife, she was about to meet the family that came with him. The heavy oak door swung open, and immediately she felt it, the chill that had nothing to do with the weather. Mrs. Carmichael stood in the foyer, her eyes sweeping over Maya with the precision of a jeweler examining a fake diamond. "So you're the one," she said, her voice carrying just enough warmth to be polite and just enough ice to make Maya's stomach drop. Mr. Carmichael appeared behind his wife, tall and imposing, his handshake brief and dismissive. "Derek mentioned you'd be joining us tonight," he said, already turning away before Maya could respond. "Have you ever walked into a room and instantly known you weren't wanted?" Dinner was set in the grand dining room, a table long enough to seat 20, but occupied by only 6. Maya took her seat beside Derek, who squeezed her hand once before releasing it to reach for his wine. She had spent the entire afternoon preparing a dish her mother taught her, a family recipe she thought might bridge the distance between her and these strangers who were now her family. The servers brought out the courses one by one, and Maya watched as her carefully prepared dish was placed on the table alongside the others. Mrs. Carmichael glanced at it, her lips pursing slightly. "How interesting," she said, the words falling flat. No one touched it. Maya watched as forks reached for every other dish, as conversations flowed around her like water around a stone. She tried to join in, leaning forward when Mr. Carmichael mentioned a business deal. "I read about that acquisition in the journal," she offered. The market response was impressive. He nodded without looking at her, then turned to Derek. "Your father and I were discussing the quarterly projections," he said, effectively erasing Maya from the conversation. Derek said nothing. He simply cut his steak and chewed, his eyes focused on his plate. The evening dragged on with the weight of a funeral. Every attempt Maya made to contribute was met with polite nods or subtle redirections. When she laughed at a joke, the laughter died in her throat as she realized she was the only one finding it funny. When she complimented the wine, Mrs. Carmichael's smile was tight. "It's from our private collection," she said. "Derek knows we only open it for family." The words hung in the air like smoke. Maya felt her cheeks burn, but she kept her expression neutral, her hands folded neatly in her lap. She had learned early in life that showing pain only invited more of it. Her father had died when she was 12, leaving her mother to raise 3 children alone, and Maya had watched her mother endure indignities with a smile, working 2 jobs without complaint. That same steel was in Maya now, hidden beneath her quiet exterior. She would not give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. What would you do if your own family treated you like a stranger at the table? After dinner, the family moved to the sitting room, a cavernous space filled with antiques and portraits of Carmichael ancestors staring down with stern expressions. Maya sat on the edge of a velvet sofa, her hands clasped in her lap, while Derek's sister Amanda held court, talking about her recent trip to Paris. "The shopping was divine," Amanda gushed, her voice high and bright. "Mother, you would have loved the boutiques on Rue Saint-Honoré." Mrs. Carmichael smiled indulgently. "Perhaps we'll go together next spring." Maya opened her mouth to mention that she had spent a semester in Paris during college, that she knew those streets well, but Amanda's voice rose higher, drowning out any possibility of interruption. The conversation shifted to family friends, to people Maya had never met, to inside jokes that required years of context she didn't have. She sat there invisible, as the family laughed and reminisced around her. Derek caught her eye once, offering a small, apologetic smile, but he didn't defend her, didn't pull her into the conversation, didn't make space for her in his world. He simply sat there, complicit in her erasure. At one point, Mrs. Carmichael turned to Maya with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Derek tells us you're not working right now," she said, the words carefully chosen. "I suppose you'll be focused on the household?" Maya's jaw tightened. She had a degree in business from a top university, had worked in finance before meeting Derek, but she had agreed to step back temporarily because he had asked her to, because he said it would make things easier as they started their life together. "For now," Maya said carefully, "though I'm keeping my hand in a few projects." Mrs. Carmichael's laugh was soft and cutting. "How lovely. A hobby." The word hung between them like a slap. Maya's fingers dug into her palms, but her face remained calm. She had learned that silence could be a weapon too, that sometimes the best response was no response at all. She would remember this moment, this dismissal, this casual cruelty disguised as conversation. She would remember all of it. The evening finally ended near midnight. As they climbed the stairs to their room, Derek was quiet, his hand barely touching the small of her back. Once inside, Maya went to the bathroom and stared at her reflection. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears, her jaw tight with the effort of holding everything in. She heard Derek moving around the bedroom, the sound of his phone buzzing, his low voice as he answered a call. When she emerged, he was already in bed, scrolling through emails. "Your family is..." Maya started, then stopped, searching for the right words. Derek looked up, his expression weary. "They'll warm up to you," he said. "They're just protective. Give time." But Maya had seen the looks, heard the tone, felt the cold shoulder. This wasn't protection, it was rejection. She climbed into bed beside him, the space between them feeling wider than the mattress. As Derek's breathing evened out in sleep, Maya lay awake, staring at the ceiling. She thought about her mother's words before the wedding. "Some families don't know how to share their sons. You'll have to be stronger than their smallness." At the time, Maya had dismissed it as a worry. Now she understood it was a warning. She pressed her hand against her stomach, feeling the slight swell there that no one knew about yet. Twins. The doctor had confirmed it just last week, and Maya hadn't told Derek yet, hadn't found the right moment. Now, lying in this cold mansion surrounded by people who looked at her like an inconvenience, she wondered if there would ever be a right moment. Would they see her children as burdens too? Would they measure her worth by how quietly she suffered? The questions burned, but Maya didn't have answers yet. What she had was a growing determination that one day, somehow, they would see her value. They would understand what they had dismissed. And when that day came, she would be ready. For now, she closed her eyes and whispered to the life growing inside her. "I will protect you. No matter what it costs me, I will make sure you're safe." In the darkness, Maya Caldwell made a silent promise to herself and her unborn children. A promise that would one day reshape everything the Carmichael family thought they knew about power. 3 months had passed since that first dinner, and Maya had learned that humiliation wasn't always loud. Sometimes it came in whispers, in subtle exclusions, in the way people looked past you, as if you weren't there. The twins were growing inside her now, her belly round and undeniable. But the announcement she had made to the family 6 weeks ago had been met with silence, so thick it could choke. Mrs. Carmichael had pressed her lips into a thin line and said, "Twins. How unfortunate. One baby is difficult enough, but 2. Mr. Carmichael had simply folded his newspaper and left the room. Derek had squeezed Maya's shoulder and said nothing, his silence becoming the soundtrack of their marriage. Every family brunch became an exercise in endurance. Maya would arrive early, help set the table, arrange the flowers, only to find herself seated at the far end where conversations didn't reach. She watched as Mrs. Carmichael poured coffee for everyone except her, as if Maya's cup didn't exist. "Oh, I didn't see you there," she would say when Maya finally spoke up, her tone suggesting that not seeing Maya was becoming a habit. "Have you ever felt invisible in a room full of people who should love you?" The breaking point came on a Sunday morning when the family gathered for what Mrs. Carmichael called her intimate brunches. Maya had been up since dawn, her back aching from the weight of the twins, preparing a dish she hoped might finally earn her a place at this table. She made her grandmother's famous quiche, the recipe that had won competitions, the one that always brought smiles. She carried it to the dining room with careful hands, setting it down among the other dishes. Amanda arrived late, her heels clicking against the marble floor, her phone pressed to her ear. "Mother, you won't believe what happened to the club," she said, air-kissing Mrs. Carmichael's cheeks before dropping into her chair. The conversation immediately shifted to Amanda's drama, to tennis matches and social calendars Maya wasn't part of. When the food was passed around, Maya watched as hands reached for everything except her quiche. It sat there untouched and cooling, a physical representation of her place in this family. She felt something crack inside her chest, but she kept her face neutral, kept her hands steady as she served herself a slice of her own cooking. "This is delicious," she said quietly, to no one in particular. Mrs. Carmichael glanced at the quiche with barely concealed disdain. "I'm sure it is, dear. We're just watching our cholesterol." The lie was so transparent it was almost funny. Maya watched them pile bacon and pastries onto their plates, watching them ignore her contribution with practiced ease. Derek sat beside her, cutting his food into precise pieces, his jaw working as he chewed. Maya turned to him, her voice low enough that only he could hear. "Are you going to say something?" He looked at her, his eyes tired. "Say what, Maya?" "Anything. Something. They act like I'm not here." Derek sighed, setting down his fork. "You're being sensitive. They're just set in their ways." Maya felt the words land like stones. Sensitive. As if her feelings were the problem. As if noticing cruelty was worse than the cruelty itself. She opened her mouth to argue, but Mrs. Carmichael's voice cut through the air. "Derek, your father and I were discussing the summer house. We thought perhaps just family this year, given the circumstances." Her eyes flicked to Maya's stomach, the meaning clear. The twins weren't family. Maya was the circumstance. Derek cleared his throat. "We'll see, Mother. It's still months away." It wasn't a defense. It was a delay, a way of avoiding conflict while leaving Maya exposed. She felt the familiar burn of tears behind her eyes, but refused to let them fall. She had cried once in the first month, locked in the bathroom with the shower running to hide the sound, and she had promised herself it would be the last time. These people would never see her break. When would you stop trying to fit in where you're clearly not wanted? That afternoon, after the family had dispersed and Derek had retreated to his study, Maya found herself alone in the kitchen. The staff had cleared the dishes, and her quiche sat in the trash, barely touched, a casualty of silent warfare. She pulled out her laptop, the one thing in this house that felt truly hers, and opened the encrypted folder she had been building for weeks. Inside were spreadsheets, business plans, investment portfolios. Maya had been working in secret, using the money from her previous job that she had never told Derek about, the inheritance from her father that she had kept separate. She had been researching, learning, building something that was entirely hers. Every night after Derek fell asleep, she worked. Every moment she was dismissed and ignored, she channeled into strategy. If they wanted to treat her like she was nothing, she would show them what nothing could become. Her phone buzzed with a message from Elise Warren, her closest friend from college, and now her secret business partner. "How was brunch?" Elise knew. She always knew. Maya typed back quickly. "The usual. I'm invisible until I'm inconvenient." Elise's response came fast. "Their loss. I finalized the deal on the property. We're officially landlords." Maya allowed herself a small smile. The building they had just purchased would generate income, and would be the first brick in an empire no one in this house suspected existed. The weeks that followed fell into a brutal routine. Maya would wake early, make breakfast that Derek barely touched, and endure the daily criticisms that Mrs. Carmichael delivered with surgical precision. "You're looking tired, Maya. Perhaps you should rest more. We wouldn't want anything to happen to the babies." The concern was fake, a performance for whoever might be watching. But the underlying message was clear. Maya was failing even at the one thing they thought she was good for. At a family dinner 2 weeks later, Mr. Carmichael made his position crystal clear. They were discussing Derek's business, the family company that had been passed down for generations, when Maya offered an observation about market trends she had been tracking. "I read that tech acquisitions in the healthcare space are up 40% this quarter," she said. "It might be worth exploring that sector." Mr. Carmichael looked at her as if she had suggested burning money in the fireplace. "Maya, dear, I think we'll leave the business decisions to those who understand them." Derek shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. Amanda laughed, a high tinkling sound that made Maya's teeth clench. "Father, she's just trying to help." The words were meant to be kind, but they landed like condescension. Mrs. Carmichael added her final blow. "It's sweet that you're interested, Maya, but running a household and preparing for twins is quite enough responsibility, don't you think?" Maya's hands tightened around her napkin under the table. "Sweet. I'm interested." As if her education, her experience, her mind were nothing more than a child playing dress-up in adult conversations. That night, Maya sat in the nursery she had been preparing, her hands resting on her swollen belly as the twins kicked and moved inside her. The room was painted soft yellow, filled with furniture she had chosen herself because no one else had offered to help. She thought about her mother, about the years of quiet endurance, about the way strength could look like surrender until the moment it didn't. "Your grandmother taught me something," Maya whispered to her unborn children. "She taught me that the world will try to make you small and will try to convince you that your voice doesn't matter. But she also taught me that survival is an art and patience is a weapon." The twins kicked again, as if in agreement. Maya pulled out her phone and opened her banking app, looking at the accounts that bore only her name, at the investments that were growing steadily, at the future she was building in the shadows of this cold mansion. Every insult, every dismissal, every moment of being overlooked was fuel. She was learning their patterns, understanding their weaknesses, mapping the landscape of their arrogance. Derek found her there an hour later, sitting in the rocking chair with her laptop balanced on her knees. "What are you working on?" he asked, his tone casual. Maya closed the laptop smoothly. "Just looking at baby things. You know, preparing." He nodded, accepting the lie, because it fit his understanding of who she was, someone small, someone manageable, someone who would never surprise him. "Don't let my parents get to you," he said, the closest he had come to acknowledgement. "They're old-fashioned." Maya looked at him, really looked at him, and saw a man who chose comfort over courage every single time. "I know exactly who they are," she said quietly, "and I'm not letting anything get to me." It was the truth, just not in the way he understood it. As Derek left the room, Maya returned to her laptop, to the empire she was building one silent decision at a time. The Carmichael family thought they knew her story, though they had written her ending. They had no idea that Maya Caldwell was writing her own script, and in it, she was not the victim. She was the storm they would never see coming. How long would you stay silent before you struck back? The twins were born on a Tuesday morning in March, two perfect girls Maya named Sophia and Emma after her grandmother and Derek's late aunt, hoping the gesture might soften his family's hearts. It didn't. Mrs. Carmichael visited the hospital once, stayed for 15 minutes, and left without holding either baby. "They're very small," she remarked, as if size were a character flaw. Mr. Carmichael sent flowers with a card that read "Congratulations" in his assistant's handwriting. Amanda posted a photo on social media calling herself the fun aunt, but never came to visit. Derek was present but distant, his attention pulled constantly to his phone, to work calls, to anything except the reality of two newborns who needed him. Maya watched it all from her hospital bed, memorizing their indifference, adding it to the growing list of reasons she would never forgive them. But forgiveness wasn't what she was building toward anymore. She was building something far more powerful. While the Carmichael family dismissed her as just another overwhelmed new mother, Maya was executing the final phases of a plan she had been developing for over a year. What would you do with a secret that could change everything? The foundation had started small, almost invisible. 6 months into her marriage, Maya had opened her first business account under her maiden name, Caldwell Ventures, LLC. She had used the inheritance from her father, money the Carmichaels never knew existed because they had never bothered to ask about her life before Derek. That initial $20,000 became $40,000 within 2 months through careful stock investments. Maya had always had a gift for numbers, for seeing patterns in markets that others missed, but in her old life, she had worked for other people's companies, making them rich while she collected a salary. Now she was working for herself, in secret, while the world around her assumed she was just waiting to serve dinner and change diapers. By the time the twins were born, Caldwell Ventures had grown to just over $2 million. Maya tracked every transaction on her laptop late at night, the glow of the screen illuminating her face as the babies slept in their bassinets beside her bed. Derek never asked what she was doing. He assumed she was reading parenting blogs or shopping online. His assumptions were her greatest advantage. 3 weeks after bringing the twins home, Maya met Elise at a coffee shop across town, the first time she had left the mansion since the birth. Elise took one look at her and frowned. "You look exhausted." Maya smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I'm fine. Tell me about the real estate deal." Elise pulled out her tablet, sliding it across the table. "The property in Brooklyn closed yesterday. 3 units, all rented, generating $6,000 a month. After expenses, you're clearing $4,000. It's not huge, but it's steady." Maya studied the numbers, her mind already calculating projections. "And the tech startup?" Elise's expression shifted to something like excitement. "They're desperate for angel investors. I think we can negotiate better terms than they're offering. If their platform takes off, we're looking at a 30-fold return in 3 years." Maya felt the familiar thrill of a smart investment, the same feeling that had drawn her to finance in the first place. "Make the deal. But keep my name completely separate. Use the LLC shield on everything." Elise nodded. "You know they're going to find out eventually, right? You can't hide an empire forever." Maya's voice was quiet but firm. "I'm not hiding it. I'm building it. There's a difference. And when they find out, it'll be too late for them to do anything about it. How far would you go to protect what you've built in secret?" The Carmichael mansion became Maya's training ground in strategic silence. Every day brought fresh humiliations that she absorbed without reaction, each one sharpening her focus. At a family dinner when the twins were 6 weeks old, Mrs. Carmichael made her expectations clear. "Maya, dear, the babies are crying again. Perhaps you should take them upstairs." The twins weren't crying. They were cooing softly in their carrier, but Mrs. Carmichael wanted Maya gone so the adults could talk. Maya stood without argument, gathering the babies and leaving the dining room. But as she climbed the stairs, she heard Amanda's voice float up behind her. "I don't know how Derek does it. 2 screaming infants, and a wife who has no idea what she's doing." Mrs. Carmichael's response was quieter but still audible. "It's not permanent. These things have a way of working themselves out." Maya stopped on the landing, her heart pounding. "These things have a way of working themselves out." The words were a threat wrapped in politeness, a suggestion that Maya's place in this family was temporary. She continued to the nursery, settled the twins, and pulled out her phone. She texted Elise, "Accelerate everything. I need liquid assets, and I need them fast." Elise responded immediately, "What happened?" Maya typed back, "Nothing yet. But it's coming. I can feel it." The next morning, Maya made a decision that would change the trajectory of everything. She called her old mentor from her finance days, Richard Chun, a man who had once offered her a partnership she had turned down to marry Derek. His voice was warm when he answered. "Maya Caldwell, I was wondering if you'd fallen off the planet." She laughed, surprised at how good it felt to talk to someone who remembered her as more than Derek's wife. "Not off the planet, Richard. Just underground for a while." They talked for an hour, catching up on market trends and opportunities. Then Maya pitched him her situation, carefully edited. I've got about $2 million in capital that I'm looking to grow aggressively. I need someone I can trust to advise me on moves that won't show up on anyone's radar but mine. Richard was quiet for a moment. You're doing this alone? Without your husband? Maya's voice was steady. This is mine, Richard. Completely separate. Can you help me or not? He agreed immediately, and within a week they had restructured her entire portfolio. Richard introduced her to private investment opportunities that most people never heard about, pre-IPO stocks, venture capital funds, real estate syndications that promised and delivered massive returns. Maya's $2 million became 4, then 6, then 10. Every dollar was carefully hidden in accounts that bore only her name, in LLCs registered in states where privacy laws were strongest, in trusts that even the best divorce lawyer would struggle to penetrate. She was building a fortress of financial independence while living in a house where people treated her like a burden. The twins grew, and so did Maya's empire. By their first birthday, she had crossed $20 million. She attended their party at the Carmichael mansion, watching as Mrs. Carmichael hired professional photographers and invited all her society friends, using the twins as props for her own social media presence. Say hello to Grandma, Mrs. Carmichael cooed to Sophia, holding her at arm's length for a photo before handing her back to Maya like a borrowed accessory. Maya smiled for the cameras, played her part perfectly, and later that night she authorized a $12 million investment in a pharmaceutical startup that Elise had been tracking. The irony wasn't lost on her. She was making decisions worth more than most people earned in a lifetime, while the Carmichaels thought she was merely decorative. Derek noticed nothing. His attention had shifted almost entirely to work and to what Maya had started to suspect were other interests. He came home late, smelled occasionally of perfume that wasn't hers, and made excuses that were barely believable. Maya didn't confront him. Instead, she documented everything. The late nights, the unexplained charges on credit cards he thought were private, the text messages she glimpsed when he left his phone unattended. She was building a case without him knowing there would ever be a trial. Would you stay silent if you knew the truth would destroy them? One evening, when the twins were 18 months old, Maya sat in her private office, a small room off the nursery that she had claimed as her own, and reviewed her portfolio with Elise over video chat. The numbers on the screen made her pause. $50 million. She had turned her father's modest inheritance and her own strategic mind into $50 million in less than 3 years. Elise was grinning on the screen. Maya, do you understand what you've done? You're not just wealthy. You're powerful. Maya felt the weight of that word. Powerful. Not dependent. Not dismissed. Not invisible. Powerful. The pharmaceutical company is about to go public, Elise continued. Our shares are going to triple, maybe quadruple. By this time next year, you're looking at close to $200 million. Maya let the number sink in. $200 million. More than Derek's entire family was worth. More than they could imagine. And not a single person in this house knew she had it. Keep everything locked down, Maya said. Nobody knows. Not yet. Elise nodded. When do you tell them? Maya thought about Mrs. Carmichael's cold eyes, about the way Derek's hand had stopped reaching for hers months ago, about Amanda's casual cruelty and Mr. Carmichael's dismissive silence. She thought about the overheard conversation, the suggestion that her presence was temporary, that these things work themselves out. I don't tell them, Maya said quietly. I show them. But only when the time is right. She closed her laptop and walked to the nursery, where Sophia and Emma slept peacefully. She had built an empire for them, a future where they would never depend on anyone's approval, never be made to feel small, never be dismissed. The Carmichael family thought Maya was trapped in their world, playing by their rules. They had no idea she had been writing her own rules all along, building a kingdom they couldn't see, preparing for a war they didn't know was coming. And when arrived, their arrogance would be the weapon she used to destroy them completely. How much power would you need before you finally fought back? The night it happened, Maya had been preparing dinner for a family gathering she hadn't wanted to host. The twins were 2 years old now, running through the house with a kind of joy that seemed to irritate Mrs. Carmichael more each day. Must they be so loud? She had complained that afternoon, her voice sharp with disgust. Maya had smiled tightly and redirected the girls to their playroom, swallowing the anger that had become her constant companion. She had grown accustomed to the insults, the dismissals, the way Derek's family treated her children like inconveniences rather than blessings. But tonight felt different. There was tension in the air, a heaviness that made Maya's instincts scream warnings she couldn't quite name. Derek had been in his father's study for over an hour, and when he emerged, his face was set in hard lines that told Maya everything was about to change. The family gathered in the formal living room, and Maya noticed immediately that this wasn't a casual dinner. Mr. and Mrs. Carmichael sat like judges on the main sofa, Amanda perched beside them with her phone in hand, ready to witness whatever is coming. Derek stood near the fireplace, his hands in his pockets, refusing to meet Maya's eyes. "Maya, sit down," Mrs. Carmichael said, her tone falsely gentle. "We need to discuss something important. Have you ever known something terrible was coming but been powerless to stop it?" Maya sat, her hands folded in her lap, every muscle in her body coiled tight. Sophia and Emma were upstairs with the nanny, their laughter a distant echo that felt worlds away from this room. Mr. Carmichael cleared his throat, assuming control of the conversation. "Maya, we've been observing the situation here for quite some time, and we've come to a difficult conclusion." Maya's heart was pounding, but her face remained calm. "What situation?" Mrs. Carmichael leaned forward, her expression practiced sympathy. "Dear, you're overwhelmed. Anyone can see it. 2 small children, the stress of this household. It's clearly too much for you to handle." The words were designed to sound concerned, but Maya heard the blade beneath them. Amanda added her contribution, not bothering to look up from her phone. "You're always exhausted, Maya. It's not healthy." Derek finally spoke, his voice flat and rehearsed. "We think it would be best if you took some time away. You and the girls. Just until you get yourself together." Maya felt the room tilt, felt the carefully constructed lie reveal itself. This wasn't a concern. This was an eviction. "You're kicking me out," she said, her voice steady despite the rage building in her chest. "That's what this is." Mr. Carmichael's mask slipped slightly, irritation flashing across his face. "We're trying to be civilized about this, Maya. You're not equipped for this life. The twins are under too much stress, you're clearly struggling, and frankly, this marriage was a mistake from the beginning." The truth finally spoken aloud. Mrs. Carmichael's false sympathy evaporated. "We tried to be welcoming, but you never fit in here. You don't understand our world, our standards, our expectations. Every dinner, every event, every attempt to include you has been painful to watch." Maya looked at Derek, waiting for him to defend her, to say something that proved their marriage meant anything at all. He stood there, silent, his jaw tight, but his mouth closed. The betrayal cut deeper than his parents' words ever could. "Derek," Maya said, her voice low and dangerous. "Look at me." He finally met her eyes, and what she saw there destroyed the last fragment of hope she'd been carrying. Resignation. Relief. He wanted this. "I think it's best," he said quietly. "For everyone. The girls will be happier somewhere calmer, and you'll have space to figure things out." Maya felt something inside her crystallize, all the pain and humiliation of the past 3 years condensing into diamond-hard clarity. She stood slowly, her movements controlled, and looked at each of them in turn. "You want me gone? Fine. But understand something. This is your decision, not mine. I would have stayed. I would have kept trying. But you're choosing this." Mrs. Carmichael waved a dismissive hand. "Don't be dramatic, dear. We're offering you a very generous monthly allowance to help with the children. You'll be taken care of." The condescension was breathtaking. They thought money would silence her, though she was desperate and dependent. Maya almost laughed. "Would you walk away with nothing or fight for what you deserve?" "I don't want your allowance," Maya said, her voice cold and clear. "I don't want anything from this family." Mr. Carmichael frowned. "Now you're just being foolish. You have 2 children to support. Where exactly do you think you'll go? Maya picked up her phone, texting the nanny to bring the twins down. That's no longer your concern. Derek stepped forward, guilt finally cracking through his facade. Maya, don't make this harder than it needs to be. We can arrange everything reasonably. You'll have access to funds. We can set up visits with the girls. Maya's laugh was sharp and bitter. Visits? With my own children? You think you're negotiating custody right now. Mrs. Carmichael's voice turned icy. Derek is their father. He has rights. The nanny appeared with Sophia and Emma, both girls rubbing sleepy eyes, confused by the tension they could feel but not understand. Maya gathered them close, feeling their small bodies against hers, and the protective rage that flooded through her was almost overwhelming. These are my daughters, Maya said, her voice shaking with controlled fury. Mine. I carried them, I birthed them, I raised them while all of you treated them like burdens. And now you're throwing us out like garbage. She looked directly at Derek. You don't deserve them. You don't deserve to watch them grow up, to hear their first words, or see their first steps, or any of the moments you've already missed, because you were too busy being a coward. Derek's face went white, but he said nothing. His silence was the final answer Maya needed. She turned to leave, Sophia on one hip and Emma holding her hand, when Mrs. Carmichael delivered her parting shot. You'll regret this dramatic exit, Maya. You have nothing. You are nothing without this family. Maya stopped at the doorway, turned back slowly, and smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of someone who knew a secret, so big it could shatter worlds. You're right about one thing, Maya said softly. I will remember this night. Every single word, every face, every moment of your cruelty. And one day, very soon, you're going to wish you had been kinder. Mrs. Carmichael laughed, a cruel, dismissive sound. Threatening us now? How pathetic. Maya didn't respond. She simply walked out, her daughters in her arms, leaving the Carmichael family to their victory. They had no idea what they had just done. As Maya buckled the twins into their car seats in the vehicle she had purchased secretly months ago, preparing for exactly this possibility, her phone buzzed. It was Elise. I saw your emergency signal. Are you okay? Maya typed back with steady fingers. They kicked us out. It's time. Activate everything. Elise's response was immediate. Are you sure? There's no going back after this. Maya looked at her daughters, at their innocent faces, at the mansion behind her where people who were supposed to be family had just thrown them away. She thought about the empire she had built in secret, the $200 million in accounts they didn't know existed, the legal strategies she and Elise had been preparing for over a year. I'm sure, Maya typed. Burn it all down. She started the car and drove away from the Carmichael mansion for the last time, not as a victim, but as a woman who had just been handed the perfect weapon. They thought they had destroyed her. They had no idea they had just freed her to destroy them. What would you do with the power to ruin the people who broke you? Maya drove through the rain-slick streets with Sophia and Emma sleeping in the back seat, their soft breathing the only sound cutting through the silence in her head. She didn't cry. She had moved past tears months ago, past the stage where pain expressed itself in weakness. Now pain was fuel. She pulled into the underground garage of a building she had purchased 6 months earlier through one of her LLCs, a luxury apartment in the city center that the Carmichaels didn't know existed. Everything was already furnished, already prepared, because Maya had been planning for this moment long before it arrived. She had learned early in her marriage that hope was dangerous, that trusting the Carmichaels to change was foolish. So she had built escape routes they couldn't see, safety nets they couldn't cut. The apartment was quiet and clean, decorated in soft neutrals that felt nothing like the cold marble of the Carmichael mansion. Maya carried the sleeping twins to their bedroom, a space she had designed months ago with their favorite colors and toys already waiting. As she tucked them in, Sophia stirred slightly. Mama, where are we? Maya smoothed her daughter's hair back gently. Somewhere safe, baby. Somewhere they can't hurt us anymore. Sophia's eyes closed again, trusting completely, and Maya felt the weight of that trust settle on her shoulders like armor. She would protect them. She would make sure they never felt unwanted, never questioned their worth, never endured what she had endured. And she would make the Carmichaels pay for every moment of cruelty. How far would you go to protect your children from the people who rejected them? Maya's phone rang at midnight. It was Elise, her voice sharp with focus. "I'm outside. Buzz me up." Within minutes, Elise was sitting at Maya's kitchen table, her laptop open, files spread across the surface like battle plans. Because that's exactly what they were. "Tell me everything," Elise said, her pen poised over her legal pad. Maya recounted the entire evening, every word spoken, every expression on their faces, the way Derek had stood silent while his parents evicted his own children. Elise's jaw tightened as she listened, her professional calm barely containing her rage. "They're going to regret this," Elise said quietly. "We have enough to bury them legally, but I need to know, how far do you want to take this?" Maya didn't hesitate. "All the way. I want them to lose everything that matters. Their reputation, their control, their smug sense of superiority. I want Derek to understand what he threw away, and I want his parents to see exactly who they dismissed." Elise nodded slowly. "Then we need to move fast. Before they realize what's happening, we need every legal protection in place. Custody, assets, everything locked down so tight they can't touch it." She pulled out a folder thick with documents. "I've been preparing for months, ever since you told me about their threats. These are restraining orders, custody filings, financial disclosures that show every penny you've earned independently. The courts will see that you're not just capable, you're exceptional." Maya looked at the paperwork, at the evidence of 3 years of secret preparation, and felt a grim satisfaction. "What about Derek's finances?" Elisa's smile was sharp. "That's where it gets interesting. I've been tracking his accounts, and there are some very questionable transactions. Money moving to offshore accounts, payments to an address that doesn't match any known business expense." She slid a printout across the table. "I think your husband has a mistress, and he's been funding her lifestyle with family money." Maya stared at the evidence, at the proof of betrayal she had suspected but never confirmed. The apartment lease in a neighborhood Derek claimed he never visited. The credit card charges at jewelry stores, restaurants, hotels. The pattern was undeniable. "Her name is Cassandra Price," Elise continued. 28, works in marketing. Been seeing Derek for about 8 months based on the transaction history. Maya felt nothing. Not pain, not surprise, just cold calculation. "Can we use this?" Elise's eyes gleamed. "Absolutely. Infidelity, financial misconduct, misuse of marital assets. This is leverage. But it gets better. I did some digging into the Carmichael family finances, and they're not as stable as they pretend. Mr. Carmichael has been making risky investments that haven't paid off. They're asset-rich but cash-poor, and if the right pressure were applied..." She let the implication hang in the air. Maya leaned back, her mind racing through possibilities. "How much pressure?" Elise pulled up a spreadsheet on her laptop. "The company Derek works for? The one his father runs? It's heavily leveraged. They took out major loans for an expansion that's failing. If someone were to acquire their debt, they could essentially control the company's future." Maya's pulse quickened. "How much would that cost?" Elise met her eyes. "About $40 million, which, coincidentally, you now have. Would you spend everything you built to destroy the people who destroyed you?" The next morning, Maya dropped the twins at a private daycare she had vetted and secured months in advance, another piece of her escape plan falling into place. Then she met with Richard Chun in his downtown office, the city sprawling below them through floor-to-ceiling windows. Richard had aged well, his silver hair and sharp suits radiating the kind of success Maya was now claiming for herself. "I got Elise's brief," he said, gesturing for Maya to sit. "You want to go nuclear?" Maya sat, crossing her legs. Every inch the businesswoman, she had always been beneath the role of dismissed wife. "I want to acquire the debt on Carmichael Industries. Quietly. Through shell companies that can't be traced back to me until I'm ready." Richard whistled low. "That's aggressive. And brilliant. With that debt, you control whether they sink or swim. But Maya, are you prepared for what comes after?" This isn't just business. This is personal warfare. Maya's voice was steady. They threw my children out like trash. They spent 3 years making me feel worthless. And my husband stood there and let it happen. I'm not just prepared, Richard. I'm counting on it. He nodded slowly, respect clear in his expression. Then let's get to work. I'll need 2 weeks to structure the acquisition properly, make sure it's airtight legally. Maya stood, extending her hand. You have 1 week. They're going to file for custody soon, and I need this leverage before that happens. Richard shook her hand, his grip firm. You've changed, Maya. The woman I knew 3 years ago wouldn't have done this. Maya allowed herself a small smile. That woman died in a mansion where nobody saw her. I'm what's left. She walked out of his office feeling lighter than she had in years. The pieces were moving into place, the trap being set with precision that would make the Carmichaels' head spin. That afternoon, Maya received the first volley from Derek's lawyers. A custody petition filed with stunning speed, claiming Maya was unstable, financially dependent, and unable to provide for the twins. The document was filled with lies, that she had no income, no home, no support system. They had underestimated her so completely that they didn't even bother to check basic facts. Elise called immediately. You see this garbage? Maya was reading through the petition, highlighting the lies in yellow. Every word. They're arguing I'm destitute, that I can't care for my own children. Elise's laugh was cold. Then let's show them exactly how wrong they are. I'm filing our response tomorrow. Financial disclosures, property ownership, business interests, all of it. The judge is going to see that you're not just stable, you're wealthy beyond anything Derek can claim. Maya felt the satisfaction building. Do it. And Elise? Include the evidence of his affair. If they want to question my character, let's examine him. The next week moved with calculated speed. Maya met with lawyers, accountants, strategists. She reviewed documents until her eyes burned, made decisions that would reshape multiple futures, and planned every move with the precision of a general preparing for war. The twins noticed nothing. They were happy in their new home, free from the cold stares and whispered criticisms of the Carmichael mansion. Sophia asked once where Daddy was, and Maya had smiled gently. Daddy made some choices, baby, but you'll always have Mommy, and I'll always take care of you. It was the truth, if not the complete truth. How much of the truth should children know about their father's betrayal? On the 7th day, after being kicked out, Maya received the call from Richard. It's done. We acquired the debt. $42 million, paid in full to 3 different creditors. The paperwork is filed, and as of this morning, you own the future of Carmichael Industries. Maya stood at her apartment window, watching the city below, and felt the power settle around her like a cloak. Do they know yet? Richard's chuckle was dark. Not yet. But they will when their next loan payment comes due and they realize who they're paying. I give it 48 hours before Mr. Carmichael figures it out. Maya ended the call and looked at her reflection in the window glass. The woman staring back was someone the Carmichaels had never bothered to see. Strong, wealthy, and utterly without mercy. They had dismissed her, humiliated her, thrown her away. And in doing so, they had created the architect of their own destruction. The trap was set. The evidence was gathered. The empire was hidden no longer. Now came the reckoning, and Maya Caldwell was ready to watch the Carmichael family burn. Would you feel guilty destroying people who never felt guilty destroying you? Maya was organizing financial records in her home office when her phone buzzed with a notification she almost ignored. It was a banking alert, routine, and mundane, but something made her pause. She opened the app and saw a transaction from a joint account she and Derek had opened years ago but rarely used, a transfer of $15,000 to an account she didn't recognize. Her fingers moved quickly, pulling up the account history, and what she found made her blood run cold. Dozens of transfers over the past 8 months, each one substantial, each one going to the same unknown account. Payments to luxury hotels, high-end restaurants, jewelry stores. The pattern was unmistakable, but Maya needed proof beyond transactions. She opened Derek's cloud storage, an account he had foolishly shared the password to years ago and never thought to change. Inside was a folder labeled personal that she had never opened before, respecting a privacy that he clearly hadn't deserved. She clicked it open, and the evidence spilled across her screen like poison. Photos of Derek with a woman Maya had never seen, their bodies intertwined on beaches and in bedroom settings that made the betrayal visceral and undeniable. Text messages spanning months, filled with promises and intimate details that proved this wasn't a mistake. It was a relationship. "Can't wait to see you tonight," one message read. "Tell your wife you're working late again." The casual cruelty of it, the ease with which he lied, hit Maya like a physical blow. How would you react to discovering the depth of someone's lies? She scrolled through months of messages, her hands shaking not with sadness, but with rage so pure it felt like clarity. Derek had been planning to leave her long before that night in the mansion. The messages revealed conversations with his parents, strategizing about how to handle Maya, how to make it look like she was the problem, so he could exit the marriage without looking like the villain. "Mom thinks we should do it soon," one message to the woman read. "The twins are making everything complicated, but once she's gone, we can finally be together." Maya's vision blurred for a moment. He had used his own children as pawns, as inconveniences to be managed and dismissed. The woman, Cassandra Price, according to her social media profiles that Maya now pulled up, had been complicit in everything. She knew about the twins, knew about Maya, and hadn't cared. In one message she had written, "I can't wait until that boring housewife is out of the picture. You deserve so much better." Maya screenshot everything methodically, her training in finance, making her meticulous even through the storm of emotion. Every message, every photo, every transaction was documented and backed up to 3 separate cloud servers. She created a timeline, cross-referencing the messages with the nights Derek had claimed to be working late, with the family gatherings where he had been distant, with the moments he had failed to defend her. The betrayal had roots that went deeper than she had imagined, and now she had a map of every lie he had ever told. She called Elise immediately, her voice eerily calm. "I found it. Everything. His affair, the planning with his parents, the financial records. He's been stealing from our joint accounts to fund his mistress." Elise was silent for a moment. Then her voice came back sharp and focused. "Send me everything. Right now. This changes the entire custody case. A judge will crucify him for this." Maya was already emailing the files. "There's more." He told her the twins were making things complicated. He discussed getting rid of us like we were problems to solve. Elise's breath hissed through the phone. "That's abandonment, Maya. Premeditated emotional abuse. Combined with the financial misconduct and the affair, we can destroy any claim he has to custody or marital assets." Maya felt the trap tightening around Derek, felt the satisfaction of knowing that his arrogance had created the noose she would use to hang him. "I want him to have nothing, Elise. Not the twins, not the money, not his dignity. Nothing." Elise's response was immediate. "Then let's make sure he gets exactly what he deserves." Maya ended the call and sat back, staring at her computer screen filled with the evidence of her husband's betrayal. She thought about the 3 years she had endured, the humiliations she had swallowed, the silent strength she had maintained while he was planning her destruction. And she realized that his betrayal was the final gift she needed. It was a smoking gun that would obliterate any sympathy a judge might have for him. "Would you thank your enemy for giving you the weapon to destroy them?" That evening, Maya did something she hadn't done since leaving the mansion. She allowed herself to feel the full weight of what had happened. She sat in the darkness of her bedroom after the twins were asleep, and she let the pain wash over her. Not tears, but a deep aching fury that demanded acknowledgement. Derek had promised her partnership, had stood at an altar and vowed to honor her, and then had spent years systematically destroying her dignity while planning to abandon her. His parents had been complicit, had pushed him toward this outcome, had treated her and her children like disposable problems. And through it all, Maya had been building an empire they couldn't see, creating a future they couldn't touch, preparing for a war they didn't know was coming. She thought about Cassandra Price, the woman who thought she was winning by stealing another woman's husband. Maya almost pitied her. Cassandra had no idea what she was getting, a weak man who had proven he would abandon his own children, a coward who let his parents make his decisions, a liar who had spent months deceiving everyone around him. "You can have him," Maya whispered to the darkness. "By the time I'm done, you won't want what's left." She pulled out her phone and composed a message to Richard Chun. "The custody hearing is in 3 weeks. I need the Carmichael debt situation to detonate exactly 1 week before. Can you make that happen?" Richard's response came quickly. "Consider it done. They won't know what hit them." Maya smiled in the darkness. Every piece was moving into position. The evidence of betrayal was documented. The financial empire was secured. The legal strategies were refined to perfection. And the Carmichaels were walking blindly toward the edge of a cliff they couldn't see. How does it feel knowing revenge is just a matter of timing? The change in Maya was subtle at first, like the quiet shift in air pressure before a storm breaks. Her friends noticed it during a coffee meeting 2 weeks after. The discovery of Derek's betrayal. Jessica, who had known Maya since college, studied her across the table with concerned eyes. "You seem different," Jessica said carefully. "Calmer, maybe? I thought you'd be falling apart after everything with Derek." Maya stirred her coffee slowly, her movements deliberate and controlled. "Falling apart would give him too much power. I'm done handing him anything." Her voice had lost the tentative quality that had marked her years in the Carmichael mansion, replaced by something harder, something that made Jessica sit back slightly. "What are you planning, Maya?" Maya's smile was enigmatic. "Justice. Nothing more, nothing less." But it was more than that, and everyone who encountered her could feel it. Elise saw it most clearly during their strategy sessions. "You're not the same woman who walked into my office 3 years ago asking for advice on prenups," Elise observed one afternoon, her tone mixed with admiration and concern. "That woman was hopeful. You're something else now." Maya looked up from the custody documents she was reviewing, her eyes sharp and focused. "That woman is dead. She died in a mansion where nobody saw her worth. What's left is someone who understands that kindness is wasted on cruel people." Elise nodded slowly. "Just make sure you don't lose yourself in revenge." Maya's response was immediate. "I'm not losing myself. I'm finding myself. For the first time in years, I know exactly who I am and what I'm capable of." Can you recognize the moment when pain transforms into power? The twins noticed the change too, though they couldn't articulate it. Sophia climbed into Maya's lap one morning, touching her mother's face with small, curious hands. "Mama, you look different." Maya smiled, genuine warmth breaking through her armor. "How do I look, baby?" Sophia thought for a moment, her little face serious. "Strong. Like a superhero." Maya hugged her daughter close, feeling the weight of that observation. She was strong now, forged in the fire of humiliation and betrayal, and she would use that strength to protect these children from ever feeling what she had felt. Emma wandered over, not wanting to be left out. "Are we going back to the big house?" Maya's jaw tightened, but her voice remained gentle. "No, sweetheart. This is our home now. Just us. We don't need that big house or the people in it." Emma seemed satisfied with that answer, returning to her toys without concern. Children were resilient when they felt secure, and Maya was determined to give them that security even as she prepared to wage war on their father's family. The contrast wasn't lost on her. She could be tender with her daughters while planning the systematic destruction of the Carmichaels. Both versions of herself were real, both necessary. Which version of yourself would win, the merciful or the merciless? Maya's transformation became impossible to ignore during a chance encounter at a restaurant 2 weeks before the custody hearing. She was having dinner with Richardson, discussing the final details of the debt acquisition, when Derek walked in with Cassandra Price on his arm. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Derek saw Maya first, his face draining of color as recognition hit. Maya watched him process her presence, watched him calculate how to handle the situation, and felt nothing but cold amusement. He approached the table hesitantly, Cassandra hanging back with confusion written across her pretty face. "Maya," Derek said, his voice strained. "I didn't expect to see you here." Maya set down her wine glass with deliberate care, her movements slow and controlled. "Why would you? You never expected me anywhere. That was always your problem, Derek. You never paid attention." Richard watched the exchange with barely concealed interest, his expression neutral, but his eyes sharp. Derek's gaze flicked to him, clearly trying to place who Maya was dining with. "I'm glad you're doing well," Derek offered, the words hollow and automatic. "The twins," Maya cut him off, her voice like a blade. "You don't get to ask about them. You gave up that right when you kicked us out." Derek flinched. "Maya, that's not fair. My parents, your parents didn't make you stand there silent while they called your children burdens. That was all you." The words landed with surgical precision, and Maya watched them hit their target. Cassandra stepped forward, her voice sharp with misplaced confidence. "Derek, who is this?" Maya looked at her fully for the first time, taking in the designer dress, the expensive jewelry that she now knew Derek had purchased with joint funds. "I'm the boring housewife," Maya said, her tone pleasant and deadly. "The one you couldn't wait to see out of the picture. Nice to finally meet you." Cassandra's face went red, her eyes darting to Derek for support. But Derek was staring at Maya with something like fear, as if he was finally seeing someone he didn't recognize. "How did you?" he started. Maya stood, gathering her purse with calm efficiency. "Know about her? About the messages? About planning with your parents?" "Derek, I know everything. Every lie, every transaction, every moment you thought you were being clever." She stepped closer to him, her voice dropping to a whisper only he could hear. "And very soon, everyone else will know too." She turned to Richard. "Shall we finish this conversation somewhere more private?" Richard stood immediately, leaving cash on the table with the easy gesture of someone accustomed to power. As they walked past Derek and Cassandra toward the exit, Maya heard Cassandra's voice rising in accusation. "You said she didn't know anything. You said she was clueless." Maya didn't look back, but she smiled. Let them fight. Let them panic. Let them realize too late that they had underestimated the woman they had tried to destroy. Would you reveal your hand early, or let them discover their mistake in court? Outside the restaurant, Richard laughed quietly. "That was brutal and beautiful. You enjoyed that." Maya breathed in the cool night air, feeling lighter than she had in months. "I did. For 3 years I bit my tongue, smiled through insults, and pretended not to notice their cruelty. It felt good to let him see what's coming." Richard's expression turned serious. He looked scared. "That's dangerous. Scared people make desperate moves." Maya's voice was steady. "Let him be scared. Let him make desperate moves. Every panic decision he makes now will only make the evidence against him stronger." She checked her phone, seeing a text from Elise. "Depositions start next week. Are you ready?" Maya typed back, "I've been ready for 3 years. Let's finish this." As she drove home to her daughters, Maya felt the final pieces of her transformation click into place. She wasn't the hopeful bride who had walked into the Carmichael mansion. She wasn't the dismissed wife who had endured humiliation in silence. She was the woman who had built an empire in secret, who had documented every betrayal, who held the power to destroy the family that had tried to destroy her. And now, finally, it was time to use that power. The storm had been building quietly for years. Now it was ready to break, and the Carmichaels would never see shelter again. How long can arrogance survive when it meets preparation? The courthouse steps felt like the entrance to a battlefield. Maya climbed them with Sophia and Emma holding each hand, Elise walking beside her with a briefcase full of documents that would reshape the Carmichael family's future. The morning sun cast long shadows across the stone, and Maya felt the weight of 3 years of planning converging into this single moment. Inside, the courtroom was already filled with spectators, friends of the Carmichael family who had come to witness what they assumed would be Maya's humiliation, reporters who had caught wind of the case through social media whispers, and a few faces Maya recognized as business associates who seemed curious about the outcome. Derek sat at the defendant's table with his lawyer, a sharp-faced man named Harold Winters, who had a reputation for winning ugly divorces. Mrs. Carmichael sat directly behind her son, her expression radiating confidence and disdain. Mr. Carmichael was beside her, his arms crossed, looking like a king waiting to pronounce judgment. Cassandra Price sat 3 rows back, trying to appear invisible but failing. Amanda was conspicuously absent, probably avoiding the mess her family had created. Maya took her seat, settling the twins with coloring books and headphones so they wouldn't hear what was about to unfold. She caught Derek's eye across the room, and for a moment they simply stared at each other. Ex-spouses about to go to war, each believing they would win. But only one of them knew the truth. When have you watched someone realize too late that they've already lost? Judge Patricia Morgan entered, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and a reputation for no-nonsense rulings. "We're here for the matter of Carmichael versus Caldwell," she announced, her voice cutting through the murmur of the courtroom. "Custody and division of assets. Mr. Winters, you may begin." Harold Winters stood, adjusting his tie with practiced confidence. "Your Honor, my client Derek Carmichael is seeking primary custody of his twin daughters based on the mother's inability to provide stable housing or financial support. Mrs. Caldwell has no verifiable income, no permanent residence, and has demonstrated erratic behavior since the separation." Maya felt Elise's hand briefly touch her arm, a silent reassurance. Let them talk. Let them build their case on lies. It would make the fall so much sweeter. Winters continued, painting a picture of Maya as unstable and dependent, a woman who had lived off Carmichael money and now couldn't function without it. He presented bank statements showing the joint account that Maya supposedly relied on, conveniently omitting the transfers Derek had made to his mistress. The children deserve stability, Winters concluded, and Mr. Carmichael can provide that in ways the mother simply cannot. Judge Morgan turned to Elise. "Ms. Warren, your response." Elise stood with the calm of someone holding a royal flush. "Your Honor, the defense's entire argument is based on a fundamental misunderstanding of the facts. Mrs. Caldwell is not financially dependent. She is, in fact, substantially wealthier than Mr. Carmichael and his entire family combined." The courtroom went silent. Derek's head snapped up, confusion crossing his face. Mrs. Carmichael leaned forward, her expression hardening. Elise continued without pause. "I'd like to submit evidence of Mrs. Caldwell's independent assets, business holdings, and income streams, all established and grown during the marriage without any contribution from Mr. Carmichael or his family." She handed a folder to the bailiff, who passed it to Judge Morgan. As the judge began reading, her eyebrows rose steadily higher. Maya watched Derek's lawyer frantically whisper to him, and watched Derek shake his head in disbelief. The documents told the story Maya had been writing for 3 years. LLCs, investment portfolios, real estate holdings, business ventures that had grown from thousands to millions to tens of millions. Judge Morgan looked up from the papers. "Ms. Warren, these documents show assets totaling over $190 million, all in Mrs. Caldwell's name alone." Elise's voice was clear and proud. "That's correct, Your Honor. Mrs. Caldwell built a business empire while married to Mr. Carmichael, using inheritance from her late father and income from her previous career. She has been financially independent throughout the marriage, though the Carmichael family was unaware of this fact." The judge's gaze shifted to Maya, a flicker of respect crossing her features. "Mrs. Caldwell, is this accurate?" Maya stood, her voice steady and strong. "Yes, Your Honor. Every dollar was earned and invested by me. My husband and his family assumed I was dependent because they never asked, never looked, never bothered to see who I actually was." The words hung in the air like an indictment. Derek's face had gone white, his mouth opening and closing without sound. Mrs. Carmichael looked like she'd been slapped, her carefully composed expression cracking. Can you imagine the moment your victim reveals they were never helpless at all? Elise wasn't finished. "Furthermore, Your Honor, I'd like to submit evidence of Mr. Carmichael's infidelity, his financial misconduct, and his premeditated abandonment of his children." She handed over another folder, this one thicker. text messages between Mr. Carmichael and his mistress, Cassandra Price, discussing plans to remove Mrs. Caldwell from their lives. Bank records showing Mr. Carmichael transferred over $200,000 from joint accounts to fund his affair. And recordings of conversations between Mr. Carmichael and his parents strategizing how to force Mrs. Caldwell out of the family. Judge Morgan's expression darkened as she reviewed the evidence. Cassandra Price stood abruptly and left the courtroom, her face burning red. Derek looked like he might be sick. His lawyer was shuffling papers desperately, clearly blindsided. "Your Honor," Winters tried, his voice strained. "We weren't aware of this evidence." Judge Morgan cut him off. "That's because you didn't do your due diligence, counselor." "Continue, Ms. Warren." Elise's voice turned sharp. "The evidence shows Mr. Carmichael systematically betrayed his wife, stole from marital funds, and conspired with his family to abandon his children. He called them complications in messages to his mistress. He discussed them as problems to be solved rather than children to be loved." Maya watched Mrs. Carmichael's face crumble and watched Mr. Carmichael's confident posture collapse. This was the moment she had been building toward, not just legal victory, but the complete destruction of their illusions about themselves. Judge Morgan set down the documents with a heavy sigh. "I've seen enough. Mr. Carmichael, your petition for custody is denied. Furthermore, I'm awarding Mrs. Caldwell full legal and physical custody of the minor children, with supervised visitation only for the father pending a psychological evaluation." Derek found his voice desperate and cracking. "Your Honor, please, they're my daughters." The judge's voice was nice. "They're children you called complications while planning to abandon them. You'll be lucky if I allow you to visit at all." She turned to Maya. "Mrs. Caldwell, I'm also awarding you full retention of your separate assets. And given Mr. Carmichael's financial misconduct, he will be required to reimburse the marital funds he misappropriated." Maya nodded, keeping her expression neutral even as triumph surged through her veins. Judge Morgan wasn't finished. "I'm also issuing a restraining order preventing any member of the Carmichael family from contacting Mrs. Caldwell or her children except through legal counsel. This court finds their behavior throughout this marriage to be emotionally abusive and detrimental to the children's welfare." Mrs. Carmichael stood, her voice shaking with rage. "You can't do this. We're a respected family." Judge Morgan's gavel cracked like thunder. "Sit down, Mrs. Carmichael, or I'll hold you in contempt. Respect is earned, not inherited, and your family has earned nothing but my disgust." The courtroom erupted in whispers. Maya gathered her daughters, who had been oblivious to the proceedings behind their headphones, and walked toward the exit. As she passed Derek's table, she paused. He looked up at her, his eyes filled with something between shock and desperation. "Maya, I didn't know, I never realized." She leaned down, her voice quiet enough that only he could hear. "You never bothered to look. That was always your biggest mistake." She straightened and walked out of the courtroom, Elise beside her, leaving the Carmichael family sitting in the ruins of their arrogance. Outside in the hallway, Maya finally allowed herself to breathe. 3 years of silent endurance, of building and planning and waiting, had led to this moment. Justice hadn't just been served. It had been delivered with surgical precision. What does victory taste like after years of swallowing humiliation? The aftermath of the custody hearing spread through the Carmichael family's social circle like wildfire. Within hours, everyone who mattered in their world knew that Derek had lost, that Maya had been hiding a fortune, that the respectable Carmichael family had been exposed as cruel and corrupt. Maya watched the fallout from her apartment, checking news alerts and social media posts with the detached interest of someone observing a natural disaster from safe ground. The first domino fell 3 days after the hearing when Richard Chun made his move. Maya sat across from him in his office as he placed the call to Mr. Carmichael, putting it on speaker so she could hear. "Mr. Carmichael, this is Richard Chun from Chun Capital Management. I'm calling regarding the outstanding debt on Carmichael Industries." There was a pause on the other end, confusion evident in Mr. Carmichael's voice. "I'm not familiar with your firm. Our debt is held by Westbrook Financial." Richard's smile was predatory. "Not anymore. We acquired your debt portfolio 6 weeks ago. $42 million, which comes due for renegotiation next month. I wanted to personally introduce myself as your new creditor. The silence that followed was thick with realization. Who are you really? Mr. Carmichael's voice had lost its authority, replaced by the tremor of a man sensing a trap. Richard glanced at Maya, who nodded. I represent the majority stakeholder of Chin Capital's Special Acquisitions Division. Perhaps you'd like to know who that is. Another pause, then a whisper. Who? Maya leaned toward the speaker, her voice calm and clear. Hello, Mr. Carmichael. It's Maya. I own your debt now, which means I own your company's future. The phone went dead. Mr. Carmichael had hung up, but the damage was done. Within the hour, Maya's phone buzzed with a message from Mrs. Carmichael. We need to talk. Please. Maya deleted it without responding. What would you say to people who begged for mercy after showing you none? The second domino fell when Cassandra Price discovered exactly what kind of man she had won. Maya learned about it through a mutual acquaintance who had seen the confrontation at a restaurant where Cassandra had arranged to meet Derek. According to the witness, Cassandra had demanded answers about the money, about his lies, about the wife he had failed to mention was wealthy and powerful. You told me she was nothing. Cassandra had screamed, loud enough for the entire restaurant to hear. You said she was dependent on you, that she'd be lost without your family's support. Derek had apparently tried to calm her, but Cassandra was beyond reasoning. She threw her drink in his face and walked out, leaving him soaked and humiliated in front of dozens of diners who pulled out their phones to record the scene. The video went viral by evening, accompanied by commentary about karma and the downfall of arrogant men. Maya watched the clip once, feeling nothing but a distant satisfaction. Derek's relationship with Cassandra had been built on lies about Maya, and now those lies had destroyed them both. The third domino was perhaps the most devastating. Mrs. Carmichael had built her entire identity on social standing, on being part of the elite circles that defined her worth. But those circles operated on reputation, and the Carmichael reputation was now toxic. Invitations were quietly rescinded. Charity boards asked for resignations. Friends stopped returning calls. Maya heard through Elise that Mrs. Carmichael had shown up at 3 different social events uninvited, trying to maintain appearances, only to be turned away at the door. She's desperate, Elise reported over coffee. Word is she's been calling everyone she knows trying to do damage control, but nobody wants to be associated with a family that treated their daughter-in-law and grandchildren like garbage. Maya sipped her latte thoughtfully. And the company? Elise's grin was wicked. Richard is playing it perfectly. He's not calling the debt due immediately. That would be too merciful. Instead, he's renegotiating terms that make it impossible for them to operate profitably. They're drowning slowly, watching everything they built slip away. Can you feel sympathy for people who are getting exactly what they gave? 2 weeks after the hearing, Derek requested a meeting through his lawyer. Maya agreed, curious about what he could possibly want. They met in a conference room at Elise's law firm, neutral ground with witnesses. Derek looked like he had aged a decade, his clothes rumpled, his face drawn, his eyes hollow with the kind of exhaustion that comes from losing everything. Thank you for seeing me, he said quietly, his hands clasped on the table. Maya said nothing, just waited. Derek swallowed hard. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know what I did was unforgivable. But Maya, please, the company, my father's company. It's been in our family for 3 generations. Maya's voice was cold. And you are willing to throw away your own children, who would have been the 4th generation. You called them complications, Derek. You planned to erase us from your life like we were mistakes. He flinched. I was weak. My parents, they pushed so hard, and Cassandra, she made me feel. Maya cut him off. Don't blame them for your choices. You stood there silent while your mother called me worthless. You kicked me out while I was caring for your newborn daughters. You stole money to fund an affair. Those were your decisions. Derek's eyes filled with tears. What do you want from me? Tell me how to fix this. Maya leaned forward, her voice soft but merciless. There is no fixing this, Derek. You want to be gone, because you thought I was nothing. Now you get to live with the consequences of not seeing who I really was." She stood to leave, but Derek grabbed her arm desperately. "Please, Maya. My father, he's had a heart attack. The stress of everything." Maya pulled her arm free. "That's not my problem. You made sure I wasn't family anymore, remember?" She walked out, leaving Derek sitting alone in the conference room, finally understanding what he had lost. How much destruction is enough when someone has destroyed you first? The final pieces fell quickly after that. Mr. Carmichael's heart attack was real, though not fatal, but it left him weakened and unable to run the company. Without his leadership, and with Maya's debt restructuring strangling their cash flow, Carmichael Industries began the slow process of collapse. Amanda called Maya once, her voice shaking. "You're destroying our entire family over hurt feelings." Maya's laugh was bitter. "Hurt feelings? Your mother told me I was unwanted at every dinner. Your father dismissed me like I was stupid. You laughed while they humiliated me. And your brother threw away his own children. This isn't about hurt feelings, Amanda. This is about consequences." Amanda's voice turned desperate. "What about the twins? Don't you want them to have a relationship with their father's family?" Maya's response was immediate and final. "My daughters will know families who love them, who see their worth, who would never call them burdens. Your family doesn't qualify. Goodbye, Amanda." She blocked the number and never looked back. 3 months after the hearing, Maya stood in her office overlooking the city, reading the final report from Richard. Carmichael Industries had been sold to a larger corporation for pennies on the dollar. The family home had been quietly listed for sale. Mrs. Carmichael had moved to a small condo in a neighborhood she would have once considered beneath her. Derek was working a mid-level job at a company where nobody knew his name, his reputation too damaged for anything better. The mighty Carmichael family had been reduced to ordinary people living ordinary lives, stripped of the power and prestige they had wielded so carelessly. And Maya? Maya had her daughters, her empire, her dignity, and the satisfaction of knowing that quiet strength had triumphed over loud arrogance. She had not just survived, she had conquered completely, proving that the most dangerous opponent is the one you never bothered to see. Justice wasn't just served. It was absolute. What would you do with power after watching the powerful fall? Maya stood in her corner office on the 40th floor, watching the city spread out below her like a kingdom she had conquered without anyone noticing. The morning sun painted everything gold, and for the first time in years, she allowed herself to simply breathe without the weight of hidden plans and secret strategies pressing on her chest. Sophia and Emma played at her feet, building towers with blocks and laughing with the pure joy of children who had never been made to feel unwanted. They were 4 years old now, beautiful and confident, growing up in a world where their mother's strength was the foundation beneath everything. "Mama, look how tall," Sophia announced, pointing at her tower. Maya knelt beside her daughters, genuine warmth flooding through her. "That's amazing, sweetheart. You built that all by yourself." Emma nodded enthusiastically. "We're building a castle. A castle where only nice people can come in." Maya's throat tightened slightly. Her daughters had internalized the lesson without her having to teach it explicitly. They knew their worth, knew that kindness was not weakness, knew that they had the power to choose who deserved space in their lives. "That's a very good rule," Maya said softly, kissing both their heads. "Always remember that you get to decide who belongs in your castle." The office door opened and Elise walked in, carrying 2 coffee cups and wearing the satisfied expression of someone who had just won another impossible case. "Your daughters are going to be CEOs before they're 20, Elise observed, settling into the leather chair across from Maya's desk. "They already have better boundaries than most adults." Maya smiled, watching the twins return to their construction project. "They'll never doubt their value the way I did. That's the real victory in all of this." How do you measure success when you've rebuilt yourself from nothing? Elise pulled out her tablet, scrolling through updates with practiced efficiency. "The pharmaceutical company went public yesterday. Your shares are now worth just over $300 million. Combined with your other holdings, you're sitting at approximately $450 million in total assets. The numbers were staggering even now. Maya had started with $20,000 and a burning need to prove she was more than the Carmichaels' dismissal of her. Now she was wealthier than most people could imagine, and more importantly, she had done it entirely on her own terms. Richard wants to discuss expanding into international markets, Elise continued. He thinks you could double your portfolio in 5 years if you're aggressive. Maya considered this, her mind already calculating risks and opportunities. Set up a meeting, but nothing that takes me away from the girls for more than a few days at a time. They're the point of all this. Elise nodded, making notes. Speaking of the girls, Derek's supervised visitation request was denied again. The evaluator cited his continued instability and inability to provide appropriate emotional support. Maya felt a flicker of something, not quite sympathy, but an acknowledgement of how completely Derek had destroyed himself. He could have had everything, she said quietly. A family who loved him, children who would have adored him, a wife who was building an empire. And he threw it away because his parents told him to. Elise's expression hardened. He made his choices. You're not responsible for the consequences. Maya knew that was true, but sometimes late at night when the apartment was quiet and the twins were sleeping, she wondered if there had been another path, a way where nobody had to be destroyed. Then she remembered Mrs. Carmichael's cold eyes, Mr. Carmichael's dismissive silence, the way they had called her children burdens, and the sympathy evaporated. They had started this war. She had simply finished it. What do you owe people who gave you nothing but pain? That afternoon, Maya received an unexpected visitor. The receptionist called up nervously. Ms. Caldwell, there's a Mrs. Carmichael here asking to see you. She doesn't have an appointment. Maya felt her entire body tense. She looked at Elise, who raised an eyebrow. Want me to have security remove her? For a moment, Maya considered it. Then curiosity won. Send her up. But stay here, Elise. I want a witness. 5 minutes later, Mrs. Carmichael walked into Maya's office, and the transformation was shocking. The woman who had once radiated cold authority now looked diminished, her expensive clothes hanging slightly loose, her hair less perfectly styled, her face lined with exhaustion and something that might have been shame. She stopped when she saw the office, the view, the obvious wealth surrounding Maya. You really did build all this, Mrs. Carmichael said softly, her voice lacking its usual edge. Maya didn't stand, didn't offer a seat, just watched her former mother-in-law with the detached interest of someone observing a stranger. Did you come here for something specific, or just to confirm what you refused to see for 3 years? Mrs. Carmichael flinched. I came to apologize. To beg you, actually. She glanced at Sophia and Emma, who had stopped playing to stare at the unfamiliar woman. To ask if there's any way, any possible way, you might allow us to be part of their lives. Maya felt the anger rise, swift and hot. You called them complications. You treated them like inconveniences. You pushed your son to abandon them. Mrs. Carmichael's eyes filled with tears. I was wrong. About everything. About you, about them. About what mattered. I lost my husband's health, my son's respect, my home, my friends, everything. And I realized too late that we threw away the only things that actually mattered. She took a step forward. Please, Maya. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But those girls are my granddaughters, and I'll never have another chance to. Maya stood, her voice cutting through the plea like steel. You're right about one thing. You don't deserve forgiveness. You had your chance to be a grandmother, to be family, and you chose cruelty instead. Can you forgive people who only apologize when they've lost everything? Mrs. Carmichael was openly crying now, her composure completely shattered. I'm begging you. Not for me, but for them. Every child deserves to know their family. Maya's laugh was sharp. My daughters know their family. They know their mother who would die for them, their godmother Elise who protected them, the friends and mentors who saw their worth from day one. You're not family, Mrs. Carmichael. You're the people who proved that blood means nothing without love. She walked to the door, opening it in clear dismissal. I want you to leave now. And I want you to understand something. This is what it feels like to be unwanted. To walk into a room and realize nobody there values you. To ask for basic kindness and be denied. Remember this feeling, because it's what you gave me every single day for 3 years. Mrs. Carmichael walked toward the door slowly, defeat in every step. At the threshold, she turned back one last time. I'm sorry. Truly deeply sorry. Maya's voice was quiet but final. Your apology is 30 years too late and worth exactly nothing. Goodbye, Mrs. Carmichael. She closed the door and leaned against it, her hands shaking slightly. Elise was beside her immediately. You okay? Maya nodded, steadying herself. I'm fine. Better than fine, actually. I needed to see her broken and begging and know that I had the power to say no. Sophia appeared at her side, tugging on her sleeve. Mama, who was that lady? Maya knelt down, looking into her daughter's curious eyes. Someone who learned too late that kindness matters more than pride. Emma joined them, always wanting to be included. Is she coming back? Maya pulled both girls close. No, baby. She's not. It's just us, and that's exactly how it should be. She stood, lifting both twins onto her hips despite their growing weight, and carried them to the window. You see this city? This whole view? Mama built this for you. So you'll always be safe, always be valued, always know your worth. Sophia touched the glass, leaving a small handprint. Because we're special? Maya kissed her daughter's hair. Because you're mine and nothing, nobody, will ever make you feel small or unwanted. I promise. What legacy would you build for the children they tried to call burdens? That evening, after the twins were asleep, Maya stood alone in her office with a glass of wine, reviewing everything that had happened over the past 4 years. She thought about the young woman who had walked into the Carmichael mansion full of hope, who had endured humiliation after humiliation, who had been kicked out with her newborn daughters like they were trash. That woman was gone, transformed through fire into someone stronger, someone who had proven that quiet strength could topple kingdoms built on arrogance. Her phone buzzed with a message from Richard. Final numbers are in. You're officially one of the 100 wealthiest self-made women in the country. Congratulations. Maya smiled, but the number didn't mean as much as the knowledge that she had done it herself, that every dollar represented a moment when the Carmichaels had underestimated her. She opened her laptop and began typing an email to her daughters, to be read when they were older and could understand. Sophia and Emma, she wrote, by the time you read this, you'll know the whole story of how we started, how people tried to make us small, how they failed, and how we rose anyway. I want you to understand that revenge wasn't the point. Justice was. Standing up for yourself isn't cruelty, it's survival. And building something beautiful from pain isn't just possible, it's powerful. You came from strength, you were raised in dignity, and you'll inherit not just money, but the knowledge that you never have to accept being treated as less than you are. The calmest waters run the deepest, and storms arrive when you least expect them. Be the calm water. Be the storm. Be everything they said you couldn't be. Love, Mama. She saved the letter and closed her laptop, finishing her wine as she looked out over the city she had conquered. Maya Caldwell had been dismissed, humiliated, and cast aside. But she had risen from that rejection to build an empire, destroy her enemies, and create a life where her daughters would never know what it felt like to be unwanted. The Carmichaels had tried to write her ending. Instead, she had written theirs. And in doing so, she had become a legend, not of revenge, but of the unstoppable power of a woman who refused to stay broken. When you survive people who tried to destroy you, what do you become? Thanks for watching. Please do me a little favor and subscribe to my channel, and drop a comment below telling us the part you enjoyed most.